The restaurant glowed softly in golden light, the kind that made every glass sparkle and every shadow look intentional. It was the type of place where people dressed their best, whispered their conversations, and pretended their lives were as perfect as the polished silverware on their tables. But that night, in the far corner, at a table meant for two, sat a silence so heavy it pulled the attention of anyone who dared glance that way. At that table sat a man who had forgotten what it felt like to be chosen, and a woman who had forgotten what it felt like to be seen. Ethan's hands trembled slightly as he folded and refolded the edge of the menu. He wasn't nervous because of the date, no, life had thrown far bigger storms his way. He was nervous because he didn't know how long kindness could survive in a world that had shown him so much cruelty. Across from him sat Rachel, a woman with eyes full of softness and a heart full of scars. She didn't know she was being watched. She didn't know three men in the corner were whispering, smirking, planning to record her humiliation. She didn't know tonight was supposed to be a joke, but what no one knew, not Ethan, not Rachel, not the cruel men holding their phones, was that this night would become something unforgettable, that a single moment of courage could flip cruelty into compassion, that a prank meant to break two strangers would instead bring them together, and that sometimes, the universe takes the cruelest setup and turns it into the most beautiful beginning. The restaurant that evening was a scene out of a quiet dream. Soft chandeliers glowing like floating lanterns, velvet curtains draping elegantly, and the faint sound of a piano filling the spaces between murmured conversations. Plates clinked gently, waiters glided instead of walked, and everything seemed carefully designed to look effortless. But at one particular table, the illusion of calm was cracking. Ethan sat with his back straight, trying not to fidget too much. His white shirt, freshly ironed, smelling faintly of the lavender detergent he always used, felt stiff around his shoulders. Lily had called it his lucky shirt and made him promise to wear it. He didn't have the heart to tell her it wasn't luck he needed, it was courage. The past 5 years had aged him in invisible ways. He had buried the love of his life. He had watched his daughter cry herself to sleep. He had learned to cook, to braid little girl hair, to force a smile even when grief sat on his chest like a stone. His co-workers never saw that version of him. They saw only the quiet man who avoided parties, who left early to pick up his daughter from school, who never flirted or dated. They joked about him being old at 30 or the boring dad. But they didn't see the battles he fought behind closed doors. Tonight, though, those same co-workers had decided they were done mocking him behind his back. They wanted entertainment. Something to laugh at. Something to share in the group chat. So, they set up a blind date behind his back, and a deeply cruel one at that. Across from him sat Rachel, trying desperately to hide her trembling hands under the tablecloth. She had spent 3 hours choosing the right dress, 2 hours convincing herself she deserved a chance at happiness, and a lifetime trying to ignore what the world said about people who looked like her. Her life had been a collection of comments: she's pretty, but she has such a nice face, if only, she'd be lucky if anyone ever chooses her. Tonight, she had hoped so fiercely it hurt, that maybe things would be different, but the moment she stepped inside and saw the three men at the corner table, their smug smiles and the way one lifted his phone, everything inside her began to crumble. She recognized that look. The look people gave right before mocking someone like her. When she sat across from Ethan, she kept her eyes low, afraid to read pity, disgust, or amusement in his. For several long minutes, they both sat in an uneasy quiet. The men behind them tried to hide their snickers, but their whispers traveled. Look at this. This is going to be gold. I can't believe he actually showed up. Ethan heard pieces of it. Enough to realize something wasn't right, but the moment everything shifted was small, almost invisible. Rachel exhaled shakily and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. For the first time, Ethan truly looked at her. Not at the dress, not at her size, not at how nervous she was. He looked at her eyes, eyes that held years of hurt, eyes that still sparkled with gentleness despite it, eyes that reminded him of someone who had once fought to stay kind in a world that wasn't. He cleared his throat softly. Do you like books? He asked, his voice warm, steady. Rachel blinked, startled. Most people began conversations with small talk. Weather. Work. Surface-level things. No one asked about her passions. Yes, she whispered. I love to read. What's your favorite? He asked. She hesitated, then said, anything that feels like escape. Ethan smiled, a real smile that reached his eyes. I know that feeling. It was the first crack in the wall she had built around herself. Conversation slowly began to flow. Not perfectly. Rachel paused often, uncertain, waiting for judgment, but Ethan never pushed, never rushed. He listened. He laughed softly when she joked. He nodded thoughtfully when she talked about her job at the library, about the children's reading programs she loved, about her dream of writing her own book someday. Behind them, the men kept recording, frustrated now that their funny moment seemed too normal. They leaned in, whispering harshly, when's he going to realize? Maybe he's just being polite. He'll freak out any minute. But he didn't. Halfway through dinner, something remarkable happened. Rachel laughed, really laughed, warm and genuine, the sound of someone who hadn't laughed freely in a very long time. It caught Ethan off guard in the best way. He found himself smiling without even thinking. The men behind them grew impatient. Come on, one muttered, is he seriously enjoying this? This is supposed to be a joke. Ethan heard enough. He looked at Rachel gently. 1 second, he said, then he stood. His steps were quiet but purposeful as he walked toward the corner table. The three men froze, their smirks dying instantly. Ethan placed his phone on their table, not slamming it, not shoving it, just placing it there with calm that felt heavier than anger. I know what you're doing, he said softly. The men exchanged glances. One tried to laugh. It's just a bit of fun, man. Ethan didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. You thought it would be funny, he said. To humiliate someone. To turn a person's heart into entertainment. You wanted to watch someone break. None of them spoke. Let me tell you something, Ethan continued, his tone firm but calm. The strongest, bravest people I've ever met are the ones who keep showing up even after the world tries to shatter them. His eyes narrowed slightly, not in anger, but in disappointment deeper than any shout. You set me up with one of the most genuine, kind-hearted people I've met in years. So thank you. Because all you've done is show me how rare real kindness is, and how lucky I am to have found it tonight. The restaurant had fallen silent. Forks paused mid-air. Conversations faded into hushes. Even the piano player's hands slowed on the keys. Ethan turned his back on the three ashamed men and walked calmly to Rachel, who stared at him wide-eyed, tears shimmering. He pulled out her chair gently. Let's finish dinner, he said softly. I'd rather sit with someone real than with people who've forgotten what that means. Rachel covered her mouth, overwhelmed. The men lowered their eyes, slowly deleting the videos they had taken, not out of fear, but out of shame. The rest of the evening was different, lighter, warmer, filled with the kind of conversation that knits two souls together. Ethan told her about Lily. About losing his wife. About the nights he felt broken but kept going because little eyes were watching. Rachel told him about her past. The bullying. The loneliness. The years she shrank herself to fit into spaces that were never meant for her. They bonded over survival. Over resilience. Over hope that refused to die. When dinner ended, Ethan walked her outside. Under the streetlight, he asked quietly, "Can I see you again?" Rachel nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks, not from sadness, but from finally being seen. "Yes," she whispered. "I'd like that." The three men watched silently through the restaurant window as the two shared a gentle goodbye. For the first time, the weight of what they'd done settled on them. They didn't laugh. They didn't smirk. They simply watched a moment they had never meant to create, one that changed them without permission. Ethan walked home thinking about fate's strange ways. A cruel joke had led him to something real. Something gentle. Something he thought he'd never feel again. The next morning, he told Lily everything. She listened, eyes huge with wonder. "Daddy," she whispered softly, "I think Mommy sent her." Ethan felt his throat tighten. He kissed her forehead and said, "Maybe she did." Weeks turned into months. Ethan and Rachel kept meeting. Slowly, effortlessly, beautifully, something real took root. One sunny afternoon, Ethan walked through the park holding Rachel's hand while Lily skipped between them, holding both of theirs. They laughed. They looked like a family, and sitting on a bench not far away were the three men who had once planned the cruel prank. They watched the three of them together, and realization sank deep into their hearts. The joke had been on them all along.